So February 18th, 2015. It's kind of ironic in a way how content creation goes. Like you have this idea of what you want to talk about, and then the world kind of makes the topic all the more real, I guess you could say. So I had already been thinking I was gonna do the vlog post for today on the whole idea of where would you want to die. As I've talked about, my wife has had cancer, has had 2 cancers so far, and over the past about year and a half, we've actually seen quite a few of her family die of different things, different ages. And so that's one of the things we've been thinking about, with this whole idea of travel is, we've actually had to have the discussion so many times it's almost become tedious on where we would want to go if she was going to die. Because when she first had the thyroid cancer by and large is fairly easy to get through. Like 95% of the time. There's like these 3 different thyroid cancers essentially, more or less. The one that 95% of the people get is completely, relatively easily treatable, 100% survival rate. And then there's something 4 or 5% of the people get that is kind of like give or take. It's a bit more like what you would consider with normal cancer. And then there is 1% where you're just fucked. There's just, you're done. You're done. You just haven't checked out yet, where it's invaded other parts of your body and it's really bad. It really is. It's kind of one of those things. Like if you get this one type of thyroid cancer, you're probably going to be fine. And if you get this other type, you're dead. There's not too much to it. So we first had a discussion of where we would go with her if she was going to die back when she was getting tested for the thyroid cancer. And it looked like her lymph nodes, they were... looks like the lymph nodes, there were problems, and so that was the what you look for with that bad type of cancer. And then we had that, and then we got through that. She had the decent type of thyroid cancer, I guess you could say. And then we went through the breast cancer, and then now, even after the breast cancer, I mean, there's still issues that come up, which we don't really know what's going on with it. It's kind of one of those cruel things in life, funny things in life in a way, that you start to laugh at a certain point, where everybody asks you, it's like, well, has she made it to the 5-year mark? And there's this whole idea that if you make it to the 5-year mark with cancer, that you're somehow better. And what you find out when you actually have to go through this process is that's a load of crap. Basically, that is the equivalent of giving a kid a nightlight. It makes you feel better, but it doesn't really do anything. And essentially, like with all these cancers, it's like you're never cured. You never know it's gone. It's just one of those things. You know that you dealt with whatever it is you knew about. What you don't know about could still be there, right? So that's where we've been talking, because, she still has some issues, some reactions that could or could not be cancer. And so one of the things we're talking about with this trip is, in 2 or 3 years, if she came down with another type of cancer, and it was bad as she was going to die, how would we have wanted to spend that 2 or 3 years, right? Would we want to spend 2 or 3 years here in this house, or would we want to spend those 2 or 3 years traveling around and adventuring and doing amazing things? And so basically we decided that. So kind of with that thought in mind, that's how I was going to do this vlog post today. I was like, okay, I was going to do this vlog post on that whole idea of where would you want to go to die. And with that in mind, I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that this afternoon. And then I took Tonto, I'm sorry, Tex has passed away now, but I took Tonto to the vet, and basically Tonto has a problem with his back leg. So he had surgery last week for a tumor on his head that was causing him discomfort, and then he kind of pulled his leg. So I took him to the vet. It was like, I was talking to the vet, I was like, yeah, he's feeling a lot better, but he kind of pulled his leg, so we need to see, pulled something in his leg, so we need to see what we do about that. And the vet looked at me and like, well, we need to talk about that tumor. It was like, and the funny thing, I went into this and I wasn't even really thinking about the tumor. I mean, it was a tumor, but I don't know. We hadn't really thought about it too much, or I hadn't. And so he's like, yeah, it actually is cancerous. And so apparently our little Tonto has bone cancer, which is lovely. And the bone cancer, something or other, is very nasty. It's just a bastard cancer. And so what they normally do with these bone cancers then is they actually amputate the appendage, and then they give the dog chemotherapy, and then you have a 3-legged dog for the rest of its life. Problem is with Tonto is that the tumor was on his skull, so you can't decapitate the poor dog. Amputating the head doesn't really work. And so essentially, we've been told that he has a 4 to 6 month life expectancy. And so the doctor then looked at his leg and said, well, his leg isn't causing him any pain, and in order to quote-unquote fix the leg, we would have to do surgery, and the surgery would take about 4 months to recover from, so that seems kind of cruel. So he ended up not getting surgery on his leg, because if he had surgery on his leg, he would spend the rest of his life recovering. Yay, right? And so now we're looking at it, and I was talking to the vet, and I said, well, is there really anything that we can do? And he said, well, since it's on his skull, there's not really a lot you can do. I mean, you can do radiation, you could do chemotherapy, but again, it's on his skull. And the thing was, is when they pulled out the tumor, they couldn't even pull all of it out. They got as much as they could, but it was actually grown into the skull. So the poor guy's kind of screwed. And so I was talking to the vet. I was like, okay, well, if he's kind of screwed, I mean, is there anything you guys need to do really past this? And he said no. And so I asked him, I said, well, you know, my wife and I were planning to take Tonto and we're going to go traveling across the country in our RV. I mean, is there any problems with that, really? And he said no. He said, honestly, you know, with this type of cancer, basically the first place it's going to go is it's going to start attacking his lungs, and essentially it's going to be a downhill slide. So we keep him, we keep the pain under control, and we keep the pain under control, and we, you know, give him steroids and stuff to make him feel better and feel energetic. But there's really nothing to do. There's not like, you know, you just, right? And so the interesting thing, and so my wife and I were talking about it, and the whole idea, where would you want to go when you're gonna die? And it's like with Tonto now, and so Tex's brother is gone, has passed away, so he's out in his house alone, kind of like we are, and he loves being around other dogs. And so a lot of the RV parks that we've been looking at have little dog parks and all that, and a lot of people travel with dogs, and so that's what we're looking at, is like, well, we can take him in the RV. We can go to these different places. He's a great traveling dog. He likes going to new places and sniffing. We can get him down south in a warmer environment, so can enjoy his time a little more, not this 14-degree crap we've got up here in Maryland. And so we can go and we can take him on the road, and then at some place when he gets bad enough and he can't breathe and he's not breathing well and he doesn't eat and he's in pain, we can put him down some random place somewhere out there. Again, those questions that you have to think about, because there is something weird, especially like I say with the American psyche, is we always have this idea of we have tomorrow. You know, so many people I've talked to, you know, I talk about traveling around the world and I talk about doing all these things, and so many people I talk to go, yeah, that's nice, that's wonderful, I'll do that when I retire. You know, yeah, when I retire, that's what I'll do. And it's one of those weird things, like nobody seems to really get the point that we don't know that we get to retire. Like there's this assumption that you'll make it to 65. There's this assumption we'll make it to old age, when in reality you have no idea if that's the truth. I know in my life I've seen a lot of young people die. My uncle died at 33, my best friend died at 22, my stepfather died at 43 or 44, and there's been quite a few others. And it's one of those things, and you sit there, like I say, you look at my wife and you think, yeah, I mean, what if you were diagnosed with something horribly terminal tomorrow? What would you have wanted the last year to be? Would you have wanted the last year to be in a cube farm? Again, would you have wanted the last year going after another $100,000? I mean, that's one of the things I look at. Again, you know, I'm not a hippie, I'm not a hipster. You've got to make money. I've got to make enough money to pay for the car and to pay for gas and to pay for the RV park. But past that, do you want the last, like, if you were diagnosed with something absolutely god-awful, what would you have wanted the last year to be? Again, we know somebody else, like cancer is just like the fucking flu anymore. It's just horrible. But we know somebody else that got diagnosed with cancer, just horrible. Just like, oh my God, like you hear the diagnosis and you're just like, no, that should not be able to happen. I mean, I know it's death. I know we all die, but you shouldn't have to die that way, right? And that's the thing, you know, we just keep trucking along and then all this stuff happens to us. So I guess that's the question as we go out and we do whatever it is. Where would you want to die? If you were diagnosed with something absolutely horrible, what would you want the last year to have been? Because that's the issue. That's the thing you don't get. That's what everybody thinks, right? You all think, like, everybody thinks, like, oh, if I am diagnosed or whatever, I will have that last amount of time. When in reality, if you actually look at a lot of these diseases, by the time you're diagnosed, you're screwed. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what, like, a lot of people don't see. Like with my wife when she had her cancers, is like, you start with all these weird little symptoms. You start with these little symptoms that you kind of brush off, and then those symptoms get worse, and you're like, huh. And then you do what everybody, well, yeah, I got symptoms. I got enough that I notice it, but it's not that bad. And then you don't really do something until it's actually bad enough that you're the type of person to go to the doctor. And what a lot of people don't realize is by the time you're at that point, with a lot of these diseases or whatever the hell else it is, you don't got much longer than that. Like I say, some of these cancers, by the time you realize you got the cancer, like I say with Tonto, 4 to 6 months and done. So anyways, I guess that's why you guys come to watch this type of vlog, to see stuff in the real world and to think about it. But yeah, our poor little Tonto. It's so weird. Things change so quickly. A month ago, we had Tex and Tonto running around, 2 little corgis, just being insane, being like corgis. And then Tex was just gone in a day. And then literally a month later for Tonto to be diagnosed with bone cancer. Oh, my golly. What are you going to do? But that is life. How would you want your last year to be?